Hi, welcome back to the channel. This video idea has been brewing for a while, but I just could not figure out how to say everything that I wanted to say. And today I've just genuinely just written down an introduction, like a jumping off point to the story that I want to tell about my reading life and how, if you're looking forward to enrolling yourself in an English literature course somewhere in July or August or September, whenever the classes start, you can have a realistic idea about how what you will be expected to do, even if you are going for an undergraduate course or if you are going for a postgraduate course. Because I think somewhere, especially in India, there's this conception that many students, at least in my batch, had that English was an easy way out, that you could just do whatever you wanted and you would be able to pass through most of your classes. Now this is true for general English courses. This is up to a point true for elective English course as well. But when you are talking about honors courses or when you are talking about postgraduate courses, things are very different. I have seen a lot of my friends struggle because they just did not expect things to be as hard as they were. So I just wanted to make a video about this, wanted to tell my journey through the education system, through my school life, through my college years, through my postgraduate years, so we could just have some clarity on what we should expect if you are going in for an English course. Now, I understand that when you are in 12th grade, you think that your entire life is mapped out already because you've chosen a single stream, and that is exactly what you will do with your life, and you are going to do 4 degrees or 2 degrees or 3 degrees in that field, and that will be it. And then you will get a job, and then you will work your way up the corporate ladder or work your way through academia, and that would be the end of it. I am living proof that that does not need to be the case. You can jump around. Like, nobody's going to stop you until and unless you are the one stopping yourself. That is the truth of it. Never liked English classes. Like, I think up until seventh grade, I did not like English classes at all because of the fact that I was never the favorite student. I was never, I'd never had a good grasp on grammar, so I never scored well in the exam as well. I could not figure out tenses for the life of me. I still don't know the rules. If you ask me point blank, what is the rule for this sentence or this tense, I can't tell you on the top of from the top of my head, because that is just not how I learned this language. I learned this language through text, through reading different novels, through reading different stories throughout my life. That is how I have come to love this language. Like, if you asked sixth grade me whether you used did and the third form of verb together in the same sentence, I would have said yes, because to my mind that sounded right at the time. Now I know that is not the case. I learned this language by immersing myself in the culture, not learning it through syntax or like how you can build up a sentence. That is not my cup of tea at all. So up until seventh grade, I did not like English classes at all because grammar used to be such a huge part of our course. And if you do not know grammar, if you can't understand grammar, you can't write. If you can't write, you can't score, essentially. So our papers used to be divided into three sections, like section A, which was basically reading comprehension, section B, which was writing, section C used to be grammar, section D used to be the literature, the assigned stories and poems that we had. If you do not know the two sections, if you are not capable enough of attempting two sections out of four, that's 50% of your exam right there. Seventh grade turns around, and like by this point I am already reading, I'm already using my library card to the nth degree. I'm taking issuing books out from my school library every week. I read, I stay up till 3 a.m. to finish Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So all those things are happening in the background. What I do not take into account is the fact that all that could have an impact on my exams as well. Seventh grade rolls around, and we have our July exams, and suddenly I have scored 29 and a half out of 30. That is the highest score I've ever gotten in my entire education. And I have 3 degrees. This is genuinely the highest scope of score. You just do not get that much score in a language ever, to the point where I was convinced that this was a mistake, and I did not even open my paper and see where like that half mark was gone. I just like saw the marks and just kept it in my desk until our teacher went around and collected the papers back. And that was the turning point. That was the point where I was like, oh, okay, you can do this thing in classroom as well. You can use your knowledge of language that you've sort of acquired through reading books in a classroom setting as well. You can enhance your academic scores as well. So that was a turning point. I was like, where a switch went, and suddenly English was one of my favorite subjects. Alongside English, I was also a big fan of science. I loved chemistry, I loved physics, I love biology. At the end, I chose physics, chemistry, and math over bio for like my 11th and 12th, or like your A level subjects. But that part of my life did not pan out at all. You often take physics, chemistry, math in order to become like, you're sort of pigeonholing yourself into the career stream of an engineer. Now, 11th and 12th is a huge jump from the level of 10th. So, like in 10th, if they are teaching you what is velocity, what is speed, in 11th, they will teach you something else only. Like, things that you can't imagine, things that you think that you will understand, but you probably most likely in the first 3 months will struggle. Once the first 3 months are gone, students they start to pick up like how to actually work out things. For me, that was never the case. I just never could cover up those 3 months and then move on. I never had the base, so I could never progress on forward. So for 11th and 12th, I struggled a lot. So by the time I was halfway through 11th, I realized that okay, science is not happening for me, engineering is not happening for me. But that at that point, it was too late to change the stream. So I just like had to persevere through these 2 years, and I did. You take sciences in 11th and 12th, you have two options. You can either go the professional route or you can go the academic route. So the professional route for sciences would have been engineering, or like just a practical application of the theory. So engineering, doctoring, all those things. And the academic would have been your bachelor's of sciences, or like studying pure fundamentals of science. So your BSc in chemistry, your BSc in math, or BSc in physics. Wait, do you have the option to choose subjects in BSc? I don't know. Okay, I never went there. As is apparent, uh, you can go the practical route or you can go the theory route. I went from aiming from for the practical round to aiming for the theory round, and then suddenly realizing by the time 12th rolled around that I was not made for this. I am not actually made for sciences. That this is not happening. This is not going to pan out. I will struggle a lot. If I am struggling in school, okay, if I'm struggling at school level, which is supposed to be relatively basic compared to a university level of math, science, physics, how will I cope with that? So that was a huge question that was in front of me. This was also the time when I started to realize that okay, maybe I could do something in psychology, or maybe I could do something in English, or maybe I could do something in journalism. Because journalism, once again, if you are doing an English literature course, journalism sort of becomes a practical application of the same. So journalism became this thing that I was aspiring towards the end of 12th. But at that point, it was a lofty goal because I did not know whether like somebody from my background, because I did not have psychology, I did not have journalism in my 11th or 12th. So like I did not have any idea whether you could get admission in humanities at all with that background. Luckily, you can. So that was the first shift in my career that I made. That from sciences, I went to humanities. Once my college admission and everything was sorted, that was the point where I was sighing a huge sigh of relief that, okay, this thing is probably going to work out. Now, again, you always have lofty goals as a student. Students are almost always looking at the best possible scenario for themselves. You think that you will become, I thought I would become a full time writer, did not happen. I thought I would become a journalist, did not happen. So, like, it's important to have dreams and goals, but also just be a bit more realistic than I was at the time. College rolls around, first year of college happens. I struggle to make friends because all my friends in the past had a science background, and all of the people in the college, they, most of them, I would say 99% of them, were from humanities background. So there was a bit of a knowledge gap that I faced because there were certain things that they all already knew that I had no idea about. So I had to cope up with that. You have general English, you have elective English, you have honors English. General English is the sort of a basic curriculum that is almost compulsory to everyone. Elective English, as suggested in the name, it is something you opt for, and honors English is something that you can choose in your. When I was studying, it was in your second year and third year. Currently, if you want to do honors, you would have to go for a fourth year. So, like, the honors would be taught in a different year altogether. Now, one thing you do need to keep in mind is that if you are doing this or taking this step in India, there is a chance that if you have family, if you have friends who are from science background, from medical background, there is a chance that they will look down upon your decision. There is a chance that you will have to hear that, oh, there's no scope for it, or oh, you can't do anything with that degree. What will you do? What are your career plans or whatever? The truth of the matter is, if you really want to do it, you will find your own career. That is not going to be the issue at the end of the day. If you have enough dreams, if you have enough ambition, you can make your life out of this degree. Sure, I will admit that the pay scale, or, like, the fancy packages, there's not going to be a lot of that with this degree. That is just a pragmatic thing you need to be aware of. There might be somebody who gets a lofty package right out of college with a humanities degree, but most of the time it does not happen. You just have to start where everybody else starts. So, yeah, keep that in mind, that there is a chance, there's a high likelihood that you will have to work through your first few years of your career where you might not be paid as much as your peers in engineering might be paid. There's also a thing that I faced, that I struggled, that when most of my family, my cousins and stuff, they were all doing their engineering, and by the time they got done with their the first degrees, the bachelors, they were ready for their jobs, they were ready for the job market. I could not afford that, because realistically speaking, an undergraduate degree in humanities, at least here, the job market doesn't do much for you. So you need to be aware of that. Even if you have honors, even if you want to go in academia, masters is going to be a sort of a prerequisite everywhere. If you want to go to teaching, then you would have to do your BA, MA, as well as B.Ed. So, like, there are a lot of steps in humanities. So you just be aware, research everything properly before you take this decision, because there will be times when you feel down about your decision, there will be times when you will feel happier about your decision. The first year of my degree, I was extremely happy that I did not take engineering, because I saw the assignments that my friends were getting, and I swear to god, like, and it's not even that, they were like 3 4 months into their courses that I could not understand that was what was happening. I asked one of my friends to send the assignment that they got after the first week of teaching. So, like, there's not much that I have supposedly missed, but every single thing went here. So I felt really great in my decision, that I shifted gears, that I moved on to humanities, that I realized early on that this engineering thing is not never going to happen for me properly, or like even the basic sciences thing was not going to happen for me properly. So I needed to move on. I could not survive in either of those fields. At the same time, when one of my cousins, they landed a job, it was a hard thing to swallow that I was still studying, and while my, somebody I had grown up with was now earning money, and so like they were independent, and I really just wasn't at that scale. So that is something you do need to keep in mind. That is something you do have to keep in check, because your road to your career will be longer than your peers. That is just the reality of it. At least it was for me. It might not be for you. You know, you might land some fancy job after your undergraduate as well. I'm not saying that it won't happen at all. I'm saying there is a chance that you might have to go for your postgraduate if you're doing a thing in humanities. That is all I'm saying. In my undergraduate, I had three subjects, three elective subjects. One of them was English, the other was journalism, the third one was computer science. Now, my family thought, hoped that I would do something with computer science, but that was never going to happen. I struggled through computer science and coding and C++ languages. I just could not grasp. I'm not a language person by learning through syntax. I'm a language person by immersing myself into that culture syntax. My family was hoping that something would pan out in computer science. I was hoping that something would pan out for me in journalism. But in the end, it was English, because my undergraduate degree, half of it was done under COVID. And so my final results, they got delayed, extremely delayed, to the point that I could not take admission in any other university apart from the system that I was already a part of. So I had to do a master's there only. Now, in my 1.5 years of undergraduate degree that I did in my college, that I attended physically because otherwise there was COVID, I fell in love with my library. The first year was a struggle because I could not make friends. The few friends that I would make, they would just like either change streams or change classes or change colleges or change countries. So like a lot of shuffling was happening. So first year was a lot of struggle to embed myself in that ecosystem, so to speak. And since I was alone, I was once again attracted towards my library, because you could just be alone in the library and there was nothing against being alone in your library. So I would go to library in my free lectures. Sometimes I would just miss lectures to be in my library. I would issue books, a lot of books, in my undergraduate especially, not as much in my masters, but in my undergraduate especially. Now, my undergraduate years was also the years where was like, collecting all this, my collection of books. So in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, these years are the main years where I had invested in my collection. I don't buy books as such, like physical books as such these days, because I just do not have the space. Even though this shelf is like, relatively new, I just do not have the space, so I just don't buy it. Coming back to the topic, in my undergraduate degree is when I read most of my books. So I read around 200 books in my undergraduate degree, and like in those years, those 3 years was also the time when I was putting a lot of effort towards my previous books channel. So I was reading a lot for those videos too. I did not have a crippling addiction to fan fiction at the time. F1 was not a thing in my life at the time. So realistically, I only just had books. So I would read a lot. So since I was reading a lot, that conversely helped me in my honors classes or in my elective classes, because in elective and honors you would get assigned plays or novels and stuff and poems. So the reading aspect of the degree, which is where most students struggle, most of my peers in my batch, they struggled, was the reading aspect. Now, if you are very clear from the get go that you want to do a master's in English, and that is the goal of your life, and you want to pursue academia, you want to become a professor, you want to just pursue English literature in its essence in academia, if that is the goal of your life, if you're very clear on it, start building a reading habit. I will be very honest, you can't survive without reading. You might survive your undergraduate courses because to a certain level, the number of books that are assigned to you, they are limited. The poems that are assigned to you, they are limited. The plays that get assigned to you, they are limited. But once you get to your postgraduate level, you would need that reading speed, that reading comprehension that vocabulary to just barely survive in your postgraduate course. In my postgraduate course, we had a paper where we were given different tools of how you can look at the text from different angles. Say that say that I am reading Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. I could read this from a feminist angle. I could read this from an autobiographical angle. I could read this from a historical angle. I could read this from a modern theory angle. So, like, let's say deconstruction. Basically, so you could read a text and get multiple meanings out of it, and that was only possible because of the fact that we were given those tools. Now, of course, when you are learning a new tool, when you are learning how to apply a theory practically on a text, there will be some text that they would take as an example. Your textbook will take as an example. You need to know the story of it. If you do not know the story of it, you cannot understand the intricacies of the theory. That is the truth of it. You can't go around it. In my batch, most of the people, they did not read the assigned readings. Even in our literature papers, so like, we had British literature 1, 2, 3, 4. We had American literature. We had post-colonial literature. So we did we had anything else? Did we have anything else? Don't think so. So like there were a lot of papers that was done for pure reading and the analysis of it. There was one paper that dealt with theories and movements in the past that have happened. There was one paper that was typically discussed for analysis and stuff. If you're not in the habit of reading chunkers, if you're not in the habit of reading classics, or if you can't understand the language that's happening in front of you, that will be a huge problem. If you are planning on pursuing English literature, you need to make sure that you have a good base for reading. You need to make sure that you have a good base for understanding the story. If you know the story, you can get by. If you do not know the story, if you're not interested in the story, you can't get by in today's scenario. When I started reading books in sixth grade, I had no idea what sort of turn my life was going to take. I had no idea that I was planning to do a degree in English literature. I always thought I would, do something in the sciences, but life has a beautiful way of turning it around. One of my juniors, she had a background in medical sciences. So she had done like a dentistry degree. Then she jumped and changed careers. She enrolled herself in the postgraduate English literature course. So you never know when or how your life is going to be impacted. You think that certain things are going to happen, but then life happens and then the other things happen. The point being, all of this to say that if you are planning on enrolling yourself in an English literature course, if you are planning on enrolling yourself in a postgraduate English literature course, you need to make certain that you are building a habit, actively building a habit of reading the assigned text. If it's extra reading, you need to do that too. If it is assigned text that are actually in your curriculum, you also need to read those thoroughly. You cannot get by. Sure, you can finish your degree. That's not something beyond the scope of possibility. All my peers did finish their degree at the end of the day, but if you do not read, if you do not understand the text, you won't understand the theory that is being taught. You won't understand the tools that are being provided to you. And if you do not do that, what is the point of doing the degree? Just to have a certificate. So that is not the point. Even if you think that you won't be able to read, these classics such as The Picture of Dorian Gray or Walt Whitman's complete poems, if you don't think you will be able to read them from the get go, nobody is telling you to start from there. You can start anywhere. Start reading essays, start reading short stories. Short stories are a great way of building a habit of reading. Read a short story every single night. Or read 10 pages. Sometimes short stories are longer. From short stories, you can move on to literary fiction. From literary fiction, you can move on to classics. And if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to go down the literary fiction path, you can always go for fantasy. In high fantasy, there are such intricate, complicated, magical lands and languages, your brain gets sharpened in a new universe. You are able to take in a whole new universe. How will you not be able to take in universe that, like, a world that we already were a part of a few years ago, a few centuries ago? That is the key advice that I would give. If you are planning to do English literature, make sure that you build a habit of reading. Make sure that you are actually reading, you are taking in your courses, what are you being taught in the classes, turn in your essays, show your work to your professors. Your professors are there to help you. Ask them questions. None of my friends would ask questions ever in the classroom, and that would lead to, deception, valleys of misinformation being formed inside everyone's head. No question is stupid. Even if it feels stupid, just ask it. I would ask so many questions. I'm sure my professors were probably fed up after a while that, like, why is this child asking so many questions? Can she give it a rest? But that is what you are there for. You are there for learning. Learn everything that is available to you. Gobble up every single thing. If you're going for an undergraduate course, start issuing all the fiction books so you can build a habit. If you're going for a postgraduate course, go for all these analysis and theories that have been done on the text that have been assigned to you already, so you can understand the text that you are reading and see how many different possibilities there are with a single text, how many different versions of a single text that can exist. At the end of the day, if you are going to be a scholar of literature, you need to read the said literature. That is the end of it. You can't go around it. You need to understand the said literature. You need to understand the different tools that are being provided to you to understand, to analyze, to see the world, to perceive the world, to be a more empathetic human at the end of the day. Because from literature, from these books, is how we become who we are as people. I've posted this quote on my stories a few days back, but it went something along the lines of that people will say that, there's no value in humanities, and then they will read poems on their funerals and weddings, and it's all about empathy. It's all about understanding each other. Language is how we understand each other. When you are doing a degree in the said language or in the said literature, you get a chance to understand the world around you. You get a chance to understand how words and stories can be manipulated, how words and stories can lead to emotional empathy, catharsis, a lot of things. So if you are going for it, it's a very noble pursuit, and I hope you gain a lot out of it, as much as I did, perhaps more than I did. Ask questions, do your reading, stay back after the classes are done. Your professors will be more than happy to help you out with anything that you are facing. That is all for today's video. I'll see you all next week. Bye!